Thanks very much, Vince. All right, so we'll get underway. So as explained, this is Chris and Karla who are with us here today, and we are doing a presentation on natural San Francisco.
So we just very recently took this visit to San Francisco. This was our 4th time down there. And we really enjoy going in October because the weather is super nice. We did pay special attention to seeing more natural places because we've been there more than once now. We've kind of seen the big tourist sites and that sort of thing, but we thought this time we'd focus more on parks and natural areas. So that's the theme of our presentation today. And let's just see here. We're trying to change the slide, making sure we can get it advanced because it's working up here in the booth for us, but it did not advance online. Give us 2 shakes, folks. There we go. I think we got it now. Terrific. Yay, much applause. Hooray. So this was, when we first arrived, we took the BART, which stands for Bay Area Rapid Transit System, from the airport, which is south of the city, quite a ways away. And it gets you down to downtown San Francisco. You come out at Market Street in about 45 minutes. So you come out and you're immediately greeted by a typical San Franciscan treat. You've got the cable cars right here. And we've learned from past experience, do not call them trolleys. They get kind of offended when you call them that. They prefer the term cable cars for these. And it's, again, something lots of fun that we enjoy doing. So on this trip, we decided to stay in a couple of different places. This was our first location. This is the Golden Gate Inn, and it's kind of like a B&B. It's an old building, a historic spot. And the neat thing about it is they have an on the site mascot, if you will, Skittles the cat. So Skittles sits there at the front desk judging you silently, but we had a really nice room there. So getting out, our first little park is Union Square, and it's not like a super treed park per se, but it does have a number of mature palm trees around it, and it's quite a nice place. And the hearts of San Francisco, you might be familiar with the Tony Bennett song, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Well, they do this every year. They break out these hearts. They have different celebrities and local people and artists paint them all differently. And I think there's an auction to raise money as well, but it's something that's really cool. And every time we've gone, there's different hearts all around the city. But these are the 4 on the corners of Union Square Park. Maiden Lane is one of the previous red light districts in the area, but it's quite a pretty little place right now. The other thing I'll draw your attention to on the right, the slide in the center there, that brick building, is actually the only surviving building in San Francisco that was designed by architect Frank Lloyd Wright. It's a very simple building, but very beautiful. The inside had a very upscale kind of shop inside too. Okay, so just around Union Square, this was also near where our first hotel was, just some sites, some building architecture was always really cool to see. And then we walked down to the ferry terminal on our first day. It was a fairly warm day when we arrived. I think it was in the high 90s Fahrenheit, which was very, very different from what we'd left back at home. I think we'd already had a hard frost back here in Moose Jaw and a little chilly. But we walked down and checked out some of our favorite places, the ferry terminal building, and went past the Dragon's Gate, which is the entrance to Chinatown. Down at the ferry terminal building, we tried our first beer. Now, before we left, we had purchased online some beer passports, which basically give us a 2-for-1 coupon at a number of different places. And we thought this would be a fun way to explore some pubs that we hadn't stopped at before. So this was one locally brewed right at the ferry terminal building. And we did find that there's a nice little walkway behind that area there along the Embarcadero where all the piers are, a public walkway that takes you past some of the historic spots. So this is Pier 7 with the lights on the side in the center upper picture, and one of the old paddle boats that they've restored and used for cruises in the bay. And we actually spent quite a bit of time out there. It was quite a nice evening. It was quiet, peaceful. The top left corner is the Bay Bridge. This one goes across to Oakland. It is not the Golden Gate Bridge. We'll see that one a little bit later on. And we just enjoyed sitting nicely, quietly, relaxing, taking in the lights of the city. We did see some folks fishing, and they did actually reel in a small shark while we were there. So that was kind of cool. And then the Port of San Francisco, this is the ferry building. It's very historic. It was not destroyed in the 1906 earthquake, but it did shift on its foundation about 6 inches, I think. It kind of rotated, but it was not badly damaged at all. So it is beautiful. It's been restored. And I can almost compare it if you've ever been to the Forks area in Winnipeg, the Johnson terminal and the other terminal there. They've put a bunch of new shops in that area, restaurants, eateries, all kinds of cool stuff. And it is still a functional ferry terminal building. Again, just walking around, there's lots of art in the downtown area, some really cool things, some more traditional sculptures, some modern things as well. And then with our inn that we stayed at, they have a partner property just down the street with a French theme. So every morning we had a complimentary breakfast just a couple doors down. So this was a really neat little place. As you can see, they kind of played up the medieval French decor a little bit there, Joan of Arc statue, etc. And then this is our first full day. So this is the Sunday, and we decided to take a streetcar, not to be confused with a cable car. I'll go into that a little bit later, down to the Castro Street area. They're having their annual Castro Street Fair. And this is something that was actually started by Harvey Milk. You might have seen the movie and read about him. He was quite an influential character in San Francisco. And it's been running, I think it's the 50th anniversary of the street fair. So it's quite a fun time to go down there. And this is when you arrive, you see Harvey Milk Plaza. There's a picture of the gentleman himself there. And the historic Castro Theater is under restoration right now, but it is a beautiful landmark. And this is a festival that celebrates people of all sorts. So all kinds of different background and that sort of thing. And it's really a fun place to be on this sort of day. Some sculpture again, there was live performances. There was booths all over the place where you could shop and pick up crafts and art and that sort of thing. And one of the things we had not done on a previous trip, again, one of those green spaces, this is Dolores Park. So if you're familiar with the film Vertigo, you might remember that one with Jimmy Stewart. The Mission Dolores is very near to this, where she goes to the church. This is a beautiful park, and you can see there's a grand landscape before you of downtown San Francisco, all in the background there. It's just a really nice place to sit. We got into some shade because it was about 100 degrees that day. It was very warm and very humid being so near to the bay. So some other shots looking around this lovely green space. And then we got hungry. So we decided to pop in and have a bite to eat with one of our beer coupon books. We found this wonderful place, again, locally brewed beer, Black Hammer Brewing, and they specialized in all kinds of bratwursts and sausages and very German themed food. So it was very delicious and a good place to get into some air conditioning for a while. We went down to the GLBT Museum, which actually has some original pieces of the first Pride flag. You can see it there under glass. And the picture of the gentleman on the left, he's one of the museum's docents, and he's holding a picture of himself standing in front of that very flag back in the 70s when it was first kind of raised in this area here. So very important to the people of San Francisco. Just some other street shots looking around. The building on the right is where Harvey Milk actually had a photography store shop at one point in time. And there's a picture of him upstairs by that bay window kind of just peering out. There's a nice little painting of a mural of him there. Again, we needed to quench our thirst, so down the street we went with our beer coupon book, and we found this little bar, the Blackbird. And here we are on our way back down to where our hotel was, closer to Union Square. In the bottom left corner, you'll see a streetcar. So this is the difference between a streetcar and a cable car. These are also vintage, but not quite as old as the cable cars. They're quite grand, and the city of San Francisco has been collecting these from around the world, primarily the United States, but they do have some European ones as well. They've been 100% restored, and they run on set lines in the city. So they're also a really fun way to get around, and no two are the same. They're all painted differently. They're all just a little bit unique that way. So. Another park we have not been to yet, just south of Union Square, is Yerba Buena Park. And it's kind of a combination of some green space, children's attractions. So you can see this beautiful merry-go-round. It's also historic and been restored. And then here in the center, we see the Children's Museum. So it's a place for them to explore a lot of hands-on things. There's a wonderful playground in the bottom left corner. And again, just some sculpture and some nice views of the green spaces there. So lots of oases. We found that San Francisco is a very nice green place. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, have they not had enough beer yet today? No, we had not. So we stopped in at the sister property of the one we had been to in the Castro area, and that had some different beer. So along with this, they had a very limited menu, but we had some empanadas, which were delicious. And again, this was a place we probably wouldn't have gone had we not got this passport. And we drank our value worth, I think, very quickly, and the rest was gravy for us. So it was another nice night. Walking back, we popped very briefly into Chinatown. On previous trips, we'd spent quite a bit of time in there. So we just kind of said a quick hello, admired the beautiful paper lanterns hanging above the street there, the darkness, and they were just aglow. It was wonderful. And again, the Dragon's Gate. The next morning, very early, we got a rental car and we decided to go across the Bay Bridge, and we ended up spending the day and night and the next day in Yosemite National Park. So this is the beginning of our journey here. Across the Bay Bridge, this is the Hotel California, or the California Hotel. I don't know if you can ever check out of this place, but it was pretty cool to see, and just kind of leaving the city there. After we got past Oakland, you can really notice how dry everything was. California in particular has been in a drought state for a number of years. They did have a little bit of moisture relief earlier this year, but it did not last. As you can see, everything is quite parched and yellow looking here. Bottom left corner, you can see there's some nut trees. I'm not sure if you call it an orchard or not, but there was a lot of places that were growing pecans and walnuts and almonds and all kinds of things like this. So kind of a neat way to see how they were using irrigation. They were going through a few different canals to water these plants, but as you can see, for sure, it was still very hot and also very, very dry everywhere we went here. So this is getting closer to Yosemite, kind of in the foothills area. This is one of the big water reservoirs that's nearby there. The name of it escapes me off the top of my head, but it was a very big lake. The water level was down just a little bit, but it was retaining a lot of moisture for the folks in this area here for agriculture. And then we started to climb. And folks, I must say, this was one of the most terrifying rides of my life. I'd been to Yosemite once before in a previous trip, but had gone in on a different route. And this one, there's no guardrails. There are straight down embankments. And this is the lower part. I think the picture with the 20 miles per hour sign was the last one I took looking out the window. Everything else, I closed my eyes as we were ascending on our way up. We got to this lookout point just before kind of the entrance of Yosemite proper. And this was our first view of the Half Dome Mountain. So bottom left picture, you can see there's just a little bit of a sneak peek of it there, kind of that bluish dome in the middle. Bottom right, there's a sculpture of what that mountain actually looks like. And we'll see more of that as we get further into the park. Several tunnels we traversed. This was kind of cool. Some of them were long, some of them were short, very, very dark inside. Kind of the first one took us a little bit off guard. We couldn't find where the lights were in our rent-a-car, but we made it through the other side safely. And then we ended up in Valley of Yosemite here. So this is water runoff from the Bridalveil Falls, which you can see in the top of the center picture in the top right. Very pretty. And this was some of the little bit of moisture that we did see on this trip to Yosemite. It was beautiful. It was popular enough with visitors, but it wasn't like a Banff level of being busy. So it was kind of a nice way to meander back on this accessible trail. Everything was ground level and see those falls. And these are just a few other snaps from around that kind of vicinity. And then there was a river picnic area where we pulled over to. I think the next slide's got a few more from there. So Chris is holding his arms out wide and you can see how large these peaks are. One of the other ones I think on the previous slide, and we'll see it again probably in the future. If you go back just one there, I think, dear. There we go. No, maybe one more. Sorry. Oh, maybe we haven't gone there yet. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm talking out of turn. There we go. Okay. So we're getting close to the little town site, and this is one of the churches. It is still used regularly on Sundays and for special occasions, so very picturesque. And this was where we stayed. So if you've ever seen National Lampoon's Vacation, this is kind of what we imagined we'd be getting, but it was much nicer when we actually arrived there. So Camp Curry's been in existence in Yosemite for, I think, close to 100 years, a very long time indeed. And you get a basic tent set up here with a bed, a mattress, and even a heater. And it was a very quaint little spot to spend some time. So for our one night, we ended up camping there. There's a map. You can see how extensive the tent area is. I think there's over 400, almost 500 of them. There are also some rustic cabins you can rent. And then the picture with the rocking chairs is the visitor center. So this is where folks can kind of gather. They can eat their meals. There are shower houses nearby, and they do have limited Wi-Fi as well. So if you need to check in and that sort of thing, it's a good little place to do that. After we'd had a little bit of a break, we decided to walk back into the town site, which wasn't a short jaunt by any stretch of the imagination, but the sun was still up at this point, so we thought we'd take advantage of that and take one of the many paths that lead us through there. So very beautiful. You can see the trees are starting to turn here. Lots of acorns. I was surprised by the number of oak trees that are in this part of California. Apparently it is a very predominant, I think it's the black oak tree, and lots and lots of them. So we were kind of listening as we walked because you could hear them let go from the trees and then suddenly hit the ground. And fortunately, neither of us got walloped on the noggin. So you can see that the sun goes down very quickly in the mountains. If you've ever visited our Rockies, it's the same sort of thing. So you don't have a lot of twilight. It's kind of light and then all of a sudden dark. The two pictures showing the same range were taken just a couple of minutes apart, and you can see the difference in the darkness of the sky there. But we still had a fair little bit of light bouncing off some of the other peaks. So we kept going. And then it got really dark. So we made our way back to Camp Curry. They had a bit of a restaurant bar area there. So we ordered this fantastic pizza with all the toppings we could imagine, and it was delicious, and ate that outside the visitor center there. They're very strict about not allowing any food at all in these tents. There are bear-proof food holders outside. You're not supposed to leave any food in your vehicles. They've had a number of problems with bears. Something else I learned on this trip is the grizzly bear is actually extinct in California, which is kind of sad because it's on their flag, their state flag, but there are no native California grizzlies left anymore. But there are black bears in the area. So on our final day there, after we checked out of the tents at Camp Curry, we went down to the village again. Now everything was open, so we popped into a couple of stores and the welcome center, that sort of thing. This was their museum, which had some interesting pieces of Indigenous art and artifacts, as well as a little gallery of Ansel Adams photography. And Ansel Adams is quite famous in the Yosemite area. He did a lot of his work in that place, and it's very special to see some of these early prints of his work. Behind the museum, they had a replica of an Indigenous village, and they're trying very hard to do a lot more with the local Indigenous community. So they have interpreters that come out quite often, do demonstration, give talks, and share their culture with visitors. So it was kind of neat to see that there. The Yosemite Cemetery is also very old. There were some graves there dating from, I believe, the 1850s. Many of them are wood. The ones in the top left corner had been restored. They don't have a lot of information on them. I think one says a boy. One might have a first name and a date. There are some more permanent memorials there though, however, and here's a couple of examples of those, mostly granite and a few marble. And this is El Capitan here on the right. This is one of the other big features that we had imposing every view we had pretty much. It's very popular with climbers, many different ways to ascend this mountain, and kind of neat to see it. It is gigantic though, so yeah. And then we left Yosemite proper and continued down another road, and we were going up to Glacier Point Viewpoint. And this is just, again, a couple of the little sneak peeks out the side of the window and a couple of pull-offs before we got to the actual lookout point. And here we are. So you get a great view of the Half Dome Peak up here, and this is literally above the town site. So we kind of left the town site, drove out into the park, circled back around, went up a bunch of switchbacks, and we were just basically in the same spot, just a lot higher up looking down. So some really cool formations up here, lots of gray granite and astounding views. The pictures don't do them justice, quite honestly, and you can't take a bad picture from up here. And I think the thing that's unique about this viewpoint is you are actually the same height as many of the peaks, rather than at the bottom looking up. So very neat. This is just a couple more pictures from the top. On the one on the left, you look down into a valley, and it is adjacent to the town site, so you can kind of get a bit of a perception of how high we actually are. Just the official lookout point sign. And the picture on the left, I believe, has got Camp Curry at the very bottom there. You can see some little white blobs. Those are the tents in the village where we had kind of camped the night before. So we went up many thousands of feet. I think it was like 7,500 feet or something from that point from the floor. So very tall. We left that area, and again, it wasn't overwhelmingly busy with people, but there was a fair number of folks up there, and we drove down another way to exit the park. And this is out to the end that has a small community called Wawona. And this is the Wawona Inn in the middle. It looks very historic, and is actually undergoing some major renovations right now. And there is a little bit of a museum. Now, we were kind of pressed for time, so we just popped out and took a few pictures, but there's a covered bridge and a stagecoach, and they have a little bit of a replica farm there as well. In the summer, they bring out animals. This is the Sequoia Grove, and this part of the park was actually set aside by Abraham Lincoln many, many years ago, and was in place for protection before Yosemite became a national park. So again, we didn't have a ton of time. We did a quick little bit of the trail and found the largest pine cone I think we've ever seen, bigger than Chris's head. And then these two pictures here on the left and center aren't typically natural, but we have two cell phone towers that are cleverly disguised, or maybe not so cleverly disguised, as trees of different kinds. And again, the landscape as we exited the park area and came back down to the flats, more fruit and nut orchards and rolling hills. And then we came into Oakland and took the Bay Bridge back across. Now, when we left San Francisco, we were on the lower deck. Coming back, we were on the upper deck. So that's kind of how they do their traffic control there. And coming back into the city, we got to see some really neat silhouettes of some of the famous buildings, the Trans-American Pyramid on the right, Salesforce One, bottom left, and just kind of the skyline as well. So coming back in, we kind of had to take a little bit of a different route. So we saw the ferry terminal from the other side, some cool sculptures along the way, the Bay Bridge, and also one of the enormous cruise ships that was in port. And we checked into our second hotel. This is the San Remo, and we've stayed there a couple of times before and always had a great experience. It's very European in feel, kind of bed and breakfast charm. Very simple. We had a sink in our room, and then there were shared accommodations down the hall with wonderful showers and toilets. So it was a really good place to come back to and very homey feeling. We were a little bit hungry after we dropped the rental car off, so we stopped at the Boudin Bakery, which is very famous for their sourdough. If you've been to San Francisco, you can't really get away from the sourdough everywhere. It's fantastic. And they're probably the most famous. They've been doing it for a long time. And yes, it's become rather commercialized. They have several satellite locations now, but it's consistently good wherever you go. So I do recommend that. Just a couple of pictures from the next morning leaving our hotel. And this is again the San Remo, and you can see kind of the eclecticness of it. Very, very wonderful. It's quite historic as well. I believe it was built just after the 1906 earthquake. That day, it was a little bit gloomy, but we decided we would hop on a bus, and San Francisco has excellent public transportation, and you can have one pass that will get you on the buses, the streetcars, and the cable cars, which is fantastic for one low price. And we took the bus out to Golden Gate Park, and through that route, we go past the Presidio, which is a former military installation, as well as Crissy Field, which is the top right picture, and we'll be going back there a little bit later on. And then we come out at Golden Gate Park. When we arrive, we get off the bus and we basically come right in through the tea garden, where there's tons of different rose varieties there. And you come out walking past the DeYoung Museum. And we were there on our last trip in December of 2022. From there, it was just a short walk down to the California Academy of Science, which is a place we highly recommend if you have 3 or more hours to spend. It was a place we wanted to go to on our last visit, but because it was over the Christmas holidays, they were backed up out the door and we weren't able to go in. So we dedicated a whole day to this place, and it's fantastic. We started with the planetarium. So they have an enormous screen inside here, and we watched a film called Spark, which was really neat. And you come out upstairs and you can look down the bottom left corner picture, down into some of the aquarium space that they have. So it's a really cool facility. This is their newest exhibit. It's basically about California nature. The bear in the top left corner was one of the last California grizzly bears that was in existence, and he ended his life in a zoo, very sadly. But because he was one of the last, they decided that he would be saved, and he was donated to this museum, and he's now on display as a reminder for conservation purposes. But it's a really neat place to go. It tells you a lot about the natural animals, plants, as well as earthquakes. So you can see the picture in the bottom left. We didn't actually take any still pictures, but they do have an earthquake room where you can go inside and experience both the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake and also the 1906 earthquake, which was stronger and longer. So it was pretty cool to go in and experience that, having lived on the prairies our whole lives, not having an earthquake. Now we have. So the rainforest is a really neat part of this place, and I think we spent maybe the most time here next to the aquarium. They have a long meandering spiral pathway that leads you from the bottom to the top, and you basically go from the roots of the trees all the way up to the canopy, and it's fantastic. They do have a number of small critters, amphibians, and snakes and reptiles in small cages and whatnot, aquariums in this part. So Chris made friends with the snake, and we always laugh because animals seem to be attracted to him no matter where he goes and what the animal is. And the snake actually came over to him while he was trying to take a picture. They also have a number of free range critters in here. So the macaws are loose, the spiders were loose. They were just climbing on some pieces of wood hanging on one of the walls. So that was interesting to see. And butterflies all over the place, which is fantastic. They actually have one of those, it's kind of like an airlock door at the top and the bottom when you come in and go out, to make sure that there are no butterflies attached to your clothing. They can check you. You're not transporting them somewhere else. Again, lots of amphibians and reptiles. Really need to get up close to these. This area was popular with all ages. There were young children all the way up to seniors. Everyone loved seeing this and being so close to the animals and birds. Just a couple of more of our friends. And then we kind of made our way down, and I'm not sure if I've got these quite in the right order or not, but the Steinhardt Aquarium is another big component of this facility. And you can go above, through, under different parts of the aquarium and see animals and plant life and different things from the sea, all these different perspectives. Just an amazing facility. And again, you could probably spend all day there. We did about 4 hours, I think, was about how long we were in the entire building. And we didn't feel rushed, but I would recommend, if you've not been there before, to spend more time than you think you will. They had a Lego replica of the building in the bottom right corner, which I thought was really neat. And we were just in time to see the end of the penguin feeding. So they've got some penguins there, and they do different shows throughout the day a couple of times. They also have a webcam where you can download an app and watch them at any time from your leisure at home, which is cool. They have a small African pavilion with some really neat exhibits. And then another really neat part of this building is the living roof. So they've got all kinds of native plants up here, and it does help to provide light as well for the rainforest down below under the dome there. Really cool, and you get a great vantage point. From there, we left the Academy of Science and we ventured down JFK Drive. This has been closed for pedestrian use since I think just before the pandemic. And there's cyclists and people roller skating and lots of people walking. And they've got this really neat art installation here as well. We had seen this artist's work in New York last year, and it was kind of cool to see more of them here in San Francisco. Walking along, we went past the Floral Conservatory, which is a wonderful place we'd been to on our last visit. So it was a nice way to kind of say hi as we walk by. And then we went into Haight-Ashbury and we found Chris's favorite eatery. Escape to New York Pizza is one of his favorite places in the whole world. And the pictures don't do justice to how big those slices actually were. We had 1.5 pieces each and we were stuffed. We made the mistake last time of having more, and so we kind of knew our limit this time around, but it's just a little hole in the wall and a great place for some food. I'm a big thrifter and fan of eclectic shops, so Haight-Ashbury is a great place to go for that. It still has a very hippie sort of California vibe, and the architecture has been maintained. There's lots of different art on walls and in the stores, so it's a fantastic place to spend some time window shopping and checking things out. The home in the bottom right, I guess it's a home and a business, is actually the home where Jimi Hendrix lived for a time in the late 60s, and it still operates to this day as a pet store. This was my favorite place. It has very high quality vintage clothing, no replicas, no reproductions, very well sourced and curated here. And I could have spent a fortune. I think next time I need to bring a trunk when I go. Just again, some pictures. The center one, there's a group of teenage tourists talking to a group of what I would call typical hippies, which is still something that exists in the Haight-Ashbury area. So kind of neat to see the different generations. And then when we were leaving the Haight, we stopped at one of our other favorite spots. It's Murio's. This is again a dive bar. And we met this little fellow here. I can't remember the names off the top of the head, but I do have them written down. The gentleman at the bar with his schnauzer they're very regular there. And they had a picture of them up on the bar. So they're at home. This was a place we had not yet been able to stop at on previous visits. This is Amoeba Music, and it's been in the location for a very long time too. So if you can think of some music, you can find it here on vinyl, on cassette, on CD. They might even have 8-tracks, I'm not even sure. But you know, all kinds of fun stuff. We were just there at the end of the time they were open, so we'll have to plan to go back when we have a bit more time to spend. We were catching the bus. We stopped outside St. Ignatius Church there. And as we were waiting for the bus to arrive, we saw one of these white vehicles go by. These are by the Waymo company, and they are self-driving vehicles. So there are no drivers in the front seats, and you see them all around San Francisco. We heard from one of the cable car operators that this is the safest company. They have had the fewest accidents, but they still have the odd accident, unfortunately. So kind of neat. And then from there, the bus stop, we caught a cable car back to our end of the city. The San Remo Hotel is in North Beach, so in Little Italy, also near to Fisherman's Wharf, which is where we spent the next day wandering around. The neat thing about going this time of year is that not only are there a bunch of festivals happening, but it's also Fleet Week. So this is a time the city celebrates its ties to the Navy and all kinds of armed forces. So there's also lots of other things going on this time of the year. And it was starting to get bustling on this day. So we've been to Fisherman's Wharf a number of times. There's lots of attractions, lots of souvenir shops here. If you're looking for something to take home, that's a good place to go. We did stop at a place, it's a Louisiana restaurant for some seafood po' boys. And I got the shrimp and Chris got the scallop, I believe, there. So. And then we had the first glimpse of the air show, and we're quite spoiled here in Moose Jaw because we have the snowbirds so close and we often see mini air shows and demonstrations and that sort of thing. But down here in California, the Blue Angels are kind of the star of the show. So they were doing some practice runs for their show that was happening the next 3 days. So we got some neat pictures of them overhead by some of the landmarks. The other thing with Fleet Week is you can tour some of the large ships that come in from different places. And so I'll have a few more pictures of that in a little bit here too. Back for more beer, yay, and kind of checking out the sights. Military bands were also prominent throughout the city during this week, so lots of different music going on. We saw a lot of these Tesla trucks too. I think we were up to 8 or 9 by the time we'd finished our trip. But the silver was the most common color. I thought I've got to take a picture because I've not yet seen one in Canada. And then this is down at the Marine Park. So they have some historic ships and boats. This is a safe area for swimmers. There's no riptides here. They actually have a large aquatic facility for people that are into swimming and kayaking and that sort of thing. And again, the Blue Angels are flying. We popped up to Ghirardelli Square, and if you are a lover of chocolate, you can't miss this place. It's hard to see in the center picture, but behind the bottom part of that light up G is basically a chocolate waterfall. So they make some on site, others are made in different warehouses, but it's a very famous San Francisco landmark. And they also need to be acknowledged for the restoration work they've done in that wonderful facility too. They've converted old buildings and repurposed them. The interesting looking thing in the picture on the right in the center, this is another one of the streetcars, and this one's kind of nicknamed the boat. As you can see, it looks a bit like a boat. It has no top, and it only comes out for special occasions. And I'd seen pictures of it before, but this was the first time I'd seen it in person and was quite impressed by it. For supper that evening, we went to the Crab House, which is at Fisherman's Wharf. Something we'd had on our last trip and really enjoyed. We got a half of a crab, some sourdough bread, and it was just delicious. Our beer here didn't come with a coupon, unfortunately, but we had a blood orange beer and it was delicious. Just some of the lights. This is the Sky Star wheel. It's a Ferris wheel that had previously been in Golden Gate Park, and they moved it down to Fisherman's Wharf. So kind of a neat way to see the lights of the city. The day after that, we rented some e-bikes, and we thought this would be another great way to get out and explore some of the parks and green spaces that we couldn't get to with public transportation or were too far for us to walk to. So we hopped on those and we started off leaving from the Fisherman's Wharf area. We went through Fort Mason, and then this is down into kind of the yacht club area. And we were heading this way because the parade of ships was going to be happening. So a lot of people were flocking down here. This is a little historic lighthouse for the harbor. And this is kind of where we decided to sit. It was right near the wave organ, which is made of reclaimed stones, monuments, and other bits and pieces of granite that had been destroyed or damaged when they were moving many of the cemeteries out of the city of San Francisco into the rural areas. And so there's a lot of reclaimed architecture happening here. And this works by the waves moving and kind of coming in and going out, and it makes some really interesting glunking noises. It's not musical notes like you'd hear on a piano per se, but it does have a really interesting sound. So if you listen closely to these tubes, you can hear the sound of the waves. And so here we sat, and one side behind us was the marina where the yacht club members had many of their boats. And the other side in the top left picture, you can see there's the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's where the ships entered. So the fire department brought in their boat. You can see the streams of water flying. They were kind of the escort. And then this is the first large ship that came in. This is one that was down at the pier in the earlier pictures. There was also one from Canada. I believe it's the one in the top right corner. And it was just kind of neat to see the progression. It went from the very large ships down to some of the smaller ones. I think the smallest one was a search and rescue vessel. And then this is where we departed to after we saw the parade of ships. This is part of Crissy Field, and again, part of a military installation for many years. It had been kind of abandoned and overgrown, and there's been a lot of work done in the last little while to rejuvenate it. So they've put in more green spaces, they've upgraded parks, they've made more walking paths. The other thing I can note too, you see the picture in the bottom right, San Francisco loves dogs, and there are dog walkers and dog parks everywhere, and it's fantastic to see. This is a former life-saving station. It's now a little bit of a museum here, and you see the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. Lots of cool things going on here. Speaking of the dogs, here's a little memorial wall near the base of the Golden Gate Bridge. I guess a lot of folks used to take their dogs for walks here, and it was a very touching place to be. We had actually just lost one of our own dogs a couple of weeks before the trip, so kind of a poignant place to stop and pause. Now, the destination for this part of our bike ride was Fort Point, which is literally underneath this end of the Golden Gate Bridge. So we got some really cool vantage points looking up to the bridge from inside the fort and outside of its walls. This is a free place to visit. It talks a little bit about the history of this fort. It dates back originally to the Civil War days and comes up to more recently. So it is a kind of a neat place to explore. They don't have a ton of interpretation or information other than what's in one wing of the building, but it's still a really neat place to walk around. And it's vast and very enormous, and just to see the architecture and the very Americana kind of look of the flag with an icon like the Golden Gate Bridge in the background was quite moving to see. And here's in the part that had a little bit of interpretation here. We've got some replicas from the Civil War era cannons, original doors. And then just nearby, if you go up the hill from fort point there to the base of the Golden Gate Bridge, you come to their welcome center. So there's a really cool little cafe. You can see a cross section of one of the cables from the Golden Gate Bridge, and they've got a little garden there because of an anniversary they're celebrating. And then from there, we went on the other side of the bridge. So we don't often get to go over to this part of San Francisco, and you see the bridge from the other side, which is kind of neat. Lots of rolling hills, rocky cliffs. There is a war memorial here, and very moving to see this. Again, just the vistas. And ducking back into the Presidio area now. So the Presidio is still used for housing, although it's not a ton of military folks there anymore. Most of it is private residences, and they are rejuvenating this area as well to reinvigorate it with different businesses, restaurants, shopping, that sort of thing. And of course, parks. Overhead, we saw another bit of the air show. This was, I can't remember the names of them, but it was a pair. The jet would come out first, and then it was later joined by the older aircraft, and they do a few little aerial maneuvers together. So that kind of neat. And we came to this lookout point kind of unexpectedly, and we saw tons of people sitting and watching the air show. You got a great view over the city, looking down over the bay, and really neat to see again the different ages of folks enjoying this. So we went back into Golden Gate Park here because we needed to take a quick little jaunt in for some lunch, and had a little explore here. A couple of the water features. This park is huge. It's larger than Central Park in New York City, and this was the first time we'd been to the west end of it. So there's an archery range. There's all kinds of places just to sit and eat. There's a bison compound and tons of different plants. Most of them are native, but some of them have been introduced. This is at the very northwest corner. This is near the Queen Wilhelmina Garden. Has a lot of tulips in the spring, but the windmill is still there. I guess it used to be used to actually irrigate this part of the park, but it was also a really good place to stop for our picnic. There's some other pictures of the windmill. And then we made it out to the actual ocean. So this was fun. I had been here once before, Chris had not. And the bottom left picture shows Cliff House, which is a former restaurant. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment or two, but a place for surfers for sure. There are riptides here, so there's lots of signs cautioning being careful. But again, you got some really great views of the water here and appreciation of how big this area actually is. So Cliff House had two iterations. This one here that's still standing is currently empty. It's under the National Park Service, and there were talks of reopening it after the pandemic, but it hasn't happened, so it sits empty. Right beside Cliff House is this camera obscura, and if you're not familiar with what this is, there's a few pictures that'll show you. You pay a small fee, I think it was $3 each, and then there's a special type of a lens that operates this opening on the roof, and it projects a reflection of the outside down, and it rotates. It's the coolest thing. Too bad we can't show you a video of it actually going around, but it does kind of a 360 view of its spot here. And the pictures there in the bottom left is what you actually see inside, and there's a bit of a diagram of how it works. And it is one of the last of these remaining, I guess, in the United States. They were quite popular at amusement parks and other places like that. These are some views looking the other direction from Cliff House, so very nearby. This is the former Sutro Baths area. You may have heard of them. It was an enormous facility built by a very wealthy businessman, Mr. Sutro, and was used up until, I believe, the 60s. Here are some pictures I found online showing the interior and what it used to look like. I understand there was a very bad fire, I think in the 1960s, and it was destroyed. And then there were no plans to rebuild it afterwards. But this is the site where you can still walk around. Because we had the e-bikes, we didn't venture down. It was quite a steep path, and we were told not to leave them unattended. So we just look up from the top, but just some different views looking down over this site. It would have been something to see in its day. This is part of the Land's End Trail as we start to make our way back to the city here now. Again, on the west side of the coast, on the west side of the Golden Gate Bridge. Nasturtiums grow wild there. It's incredible. This is the Legion of Honor. Again, if you've seen the movie Vertigo, this is where she sees the painting that looks like her. She goes in here. It has a lot of fine art. And again, it was closed this time of day, but it was still neat to go around the grounds a little bit and check things out. These are the Lincoln Steps, and there's a number of these tiled pieces of art throughout the city. This was the first one we've actually been able to stop and see. We kind of found it by accident, but very incredible. Had to wait a while to take a picture. And just a couple of different pictures with the various architecture. You can see Art Deco, you can see modern things, you can see some Italian influences here. And the picture in the center bottom there is one of the neighborhoods we kind of cycled through, and it's got a real mix of different styles. Really neat. Coming back, we did cut through the Presidio yet again, and these are some of the homes that formerly occupied by military officers that have been repurposed, sold to private citizens, used for rentals and that sort of thing. And we stopped at the Palace of Culture. This was actually built for an exhibition at the turn of the century. It was rebuilt out of more permanent materials because the city loved it so very much. It's got a lovely reflecting pond in front of it and a nice place to stop for a picnic or just to stop and be quiet and enjoy the wildlife. There's a lot of bird species around living in the water and the trees. And this is on our bike ride just back into San Francisco. We went past Fort Mason again. You can see kind of the wet clouds rolling in a little bit, some nice little bits of sunset. They don't get the kind of sunsets that we often get here on the prairies, so this was kind of special to see it here. Looking back at the city and the aquatic park coming in. And then we returned our bikes and made our way home. We were on them for about, it was like 10 hours or something like that, and the battery charge lasted the whole time. This is back in North Beach now, and people are really getting prepped and ready for the Italian Heritage Fair, which is happening that weekend. And so we did a quick little walk down. All of the bars and restaurants were just a hustle and bustle. There were no room for us to go in, so we just kind of did a walk around, took some pictures of the neat things that we saw and had been to in the past. And then the next day we set out for Japantown. This is a kind of like Chinatown, much smaller, but it is home to many native Japanese folks that have lived here for generations, and they're doing some renovations in the area to revitalize it. So lots of different shops. Cat culture is very key here. Lots of souvenirs that had things to do with cats. I don't think my cat would appreciate the cat hoodie there. We also had some lovely sushi and little bits and appetizers here and there. We did a little walk up the pedestrian road, saw some cool things along the way, fellow playing an instrument. There was an origami and paper art store, so I made a heart, but I did not leave it in San Francisco. I took it home with me. And for lunch that day, we had Mongolian barbecue, which was a first for both of us. There was probably too much food, but we did a decent job at eating what we had there. Chris took the picture of me eating because I normally don't cook, he does. And so this was proof that I actually made something and cooked it myself, so haha. We found this neat little park. This is, I think it's called the Cottages, and it's just a small little block, historic row homes, and it's got this little narrow green space all along it, and just a pretty little place. Some of the other architecture in the area, again, very typical of the Bay Area, the Victorians, and then you'll likely recognize this. These are the Painted Ladies, one of the most photographed areas in the city, and home to the park that sits kind of just beside it here. On the other side of the park is a dog park, and we didn't know this was here. We found it, and it was kind of cool to walk over and watch the dogs play ball. A place that we wanted to stop at, we'd not been at before, was called the Emporium. And this is basically an arcade inside of a repurposed historic theater that had sat empty for many years. So they've done a lot of really neat things with bringing it up to code, installing all these neat pieces of art that glow, different machines. They've got some video arcade games. They've got pinball. They've got pool, and then they were also showing Halloween movies up on the theater screen. We had popped back there later on. I think I've got one picture, and they've had a DJ in. This was my favorite part. I'm a big roller skating fan, and I grew up roller skating, and we'd done this before in San Francisco in a different location. We visited the Church of Eight Wheels, which is actually a historic church. It's over 100 years old. It also sat vacant for a long time, and this gentleman named David Miles Jr. decided to bring it back to life. He loves roller skating too. That's a picture of him and I on the right, and he's made it into this fabulous disco place. So every night of the week, there's different types of themes for different ages. They do lessons, and it was just a really fun place to go. They've still got a lot of the original architecture, and they spin the disco lights, and it was just a hoot. This is just a really neat thing when we came back down to the downtown area after that. There's a fountain in the downtown area, and some of our treats and things that we purchased in Japantown. We had some squid ball puffs and some jelly drinks and a couple of our little souvenirs. We went to the Musée Mécanique on our final full day, and this is just another place that has a lot of cool old games, a lot of Nickelodeons, some vintage things from almost every era. So if you had a childhood where you went to play something or looked at something, it might be in this place. Really cool. And then it was the Italian Heritage Day parade that day. So we found a good spot. We got some calamari to eat as a snack, and we sat down and watched a little bit of this parade. And of course, they've got different bands coming in. The military is also a big part of this because it overlaps with Fleet Week. A number of restored cars, really neat to see. High school marching bands, just fantastic. The neat thing here is the Boudin Bakery was throwing out sourdough instead of candy. So that was an awesome treat. And then we decided to take a really cheap cruise, and we hopped a ferry from the ferry terminal building and went over to Sausalito. And this is just a shot of Angel Island on the right. Tiburon is in the bottom left corner. It's a very elite area. And then this is arriving in Sausalito. One of the fountains just near the ferry terminal there. And lots of really beautiful green space. It's a lot like San Francisco for architecture and layout, very hilly, as you can see, and the houses are just built into the hills there. There's one of the steep set of stairs going up. Sausalito is also quite famous for their houseboat community. People have a lot of yachts, but there's a lot of people that actually live in this area here on houseboats. So a really cool place to wander around and look, and lots to see and do. Again, very dog friendly. The watering hole and biscuit bar for dogs to stop and drink. We need a little bit of a snack, so we stopped at the Barrel House. This is a former ferry terminal building. It's been beautifully restored. You can see it does look like a barrel inside. And we had some sparkling wine and some garlic fries. Well, while we were waiting for the next ferry to come to pick us up to take us back home, we did a quick little walk along the shore. We saw a few little crabs scurrying along the rocks and the fog rolling in. This was incredible to see. It's in the top right corner here, kind of creeping over the hillside. Did a quick little jaunt around to see some of the other buildings. Most of them are starting to close up for the evening. Again, just really, really neat and quite different from the flat prairies. And we found this cool little art gallery in the back corner here, tucked away down a little bit of a courtyard. And we met the artist herself. She does kind of three-dimensional work where it actually stands out from the different things that she paints on. Behind her in the picture on the right, you can see a picture that she's working on for a couple from Las Vegas, and they're working on that right now. Here we have just kind of us waiting for the ferry. It's just pulling in and getting ready to board everybody. The neat thing with the ferries is you can take your bicycles on here. So if you want to rent an e-bike and explore both communities, you can. The fog again, kind of eclipsing the Golden Gate Bridge. And us approaching the Golden Gate as we go by. You actually go behind Alcatraz Island. And I think that's it in the bottom left corner there. Coming back into port, just beautiful lights again of the city. And this really neat mural, very vibrant inside the ferry terminal building. Chris is beside a Canadian parking sign because there's a Canadian ship in port for Fleet Week. And this was our Thanksgiving supper. We had turkey sandwiches and some lovely wine. And that basically wraps up our little presentation there. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing some natural sides of San Francisco that maybe you hadn't before. And if you have any questions or would like to know more about our trip, we'll hang around for a couple minutes after. Thank you.